floor is yours, Councilman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to rise and talk about what transpired last week with Attorney General DeWine and his release of his report, and why, following that during the public safety meeting, why I spoke out against that. For folks to understand what exactly happened last week with DeWine, AG DeWine, is you have to understand how the system's supposed to work. We're supposed to, when someone is alleged to have committed a crime, they are innocent until proven guilty. But our system says that there should be an investigation, and then that investigation, if it's a felony level, is turned over to our county prosecutor to determine whether criminal charges are filed via the grand jury or through their own indictment process. What AG DeWine did after being invited to do the investigation, he decided that he would not just turn over the report to the Attorney General, to the county prosecutor, but he was going to go one step further and give us his opinion about what's going on in this chartered city. Now, maybe I'm not, please. This charter city. Now, I used to be a state senator, so I know what the responsibilities and what authorizes the AG's powers. Notwithstanding 3 hours on Trevisano's show, notwithstanding his world tour around Cleveland giving interviews to every media, notwithstanding that in his statement that I owe it to the people to give them the truth, the AG advises the county prosecutor, but he doesn't tell Frank Jackson or Michael McGrath or Marty Flask what directly to do. We're a charter city. He has limited powers, notwithstanding his throwing his weight around. Now, I know the media enjoyed the report, but it creates a possible bias, slight attaint for Prosecutor McGinty's process. Because however you read the report, did DeWine say that the police officers should not be charged because the system was at fault? Or did he say that the police officers were at fault because they violated certain rules? He had it both ways last week, and he had the headlines to go with it. It is not the way to do it. In our criminal justice system, it has to be predictable and understandable, and you can't pick and choose criminal cases simply because they make the papers, whereas the other ones don't. You have to be consistent, because I tell my folks, be patient, and they will decide, and then we will react. But when AG DeWine decides to step up in the name of telling the people the truth, in his ego trip, it sends different signals, and it shows preferential treatment in the criminal justice system. Everyone alleged to have committed a crime deserves their case to be reviewed quietly and then determine if there's guilt, notwithstanding the media frenzy of wanting to know the facts. So Mayor Jackson and Michael McGrath, Chief McGrath, and Director Flask is doing it the right way administratively. They stayed quiet because they know neutrality is critical for whatever they decide to do, so that they can be credible with my people when they make their decision. That was wrong with last week.
Councilman.
And so, as I wrap up, thank you, Mr. President, I support Police Chief McGrath, Director Flask, and Mayor Jackson. And I admonish my county prosecutor and my AG. Let's be predictable, let's be fair, let's wait for everything to come in. And I want to hope that we continue to support our leaders here. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman Johnson. Councilman Kevin Conwell, Safety Chair.
To my colleagues, we, after this shooting that took place November 29th, council went on recess, but I did not. I reached out to Safo, the head of the Black Shield, and I said, meet with me for breakfast, and I need to talk with you about what's going on with the police. And he said, okay, so we met at yours truly in Shaker Square, in Ken Johnson's area. Matter of fact, I even reached out to you, told you I was going to meet with them, and Councilman Johnson said, good luck, good luck. And it was sad, it hurt my guts afterwards, you know. And I met with Safo of the Black Shields, and his focus was on the police code, the Man in Blue code that Mark Nemec wrote about in the Plain Dealer yesterday, and he told the truth. And then when I walked out of there, I told my residents also, some of my key stakeholders, my bosses, who think that this thing is about color. It's not about color. It's about the policeman in a code of blue. That's what it's about. So I asked Safo, I said, get on the phone, let's call Jeffrey Fulmer, let's meet with him Sunday night. So we met at Steelyard Common that same day, and we discussed Jeffrey, what he said about it was a good chase. And if anyone think that this thing was nuts, because I didn't like that. And I wanted to talk with him man to man, and we met in Steelyard's Common. And he, every time I talked about regulations and how the police chief stayed and the systems and the models, his whole focus was on the conduct of the blue, the code of blue. His whole focus was right there, right there. And when I left, I told my residents, I said, you know what? This thing is not about black and white. It's about that culture. That culture is so thick you can cut it with a knife. It's not about black or white. It's about what they want, not to be regulated. And the chief, as well as the mayor, this is why I support Director Marty Flask, the chief of police, as well as the mayor says he's talking about systems and regulation. If they stay in the box, Mr. Mayor Frank Jackson, if they stay in the box, then they're fine. That's regulations, that's systems, that's models, then they're okay. But if they go on the outside of the box, then I have to deal with them. Policies are non-negotiable, non-negotiable. You learn that in business. Policies are non-negotiable. We have to stick with Chief McGrath. We have to stick with Marty Flask. We have to stick with Mayor Frank Jackson on this, because the only thing they want to do is find out the truth. And then if we need to change some of the systems, then we would do that. Now let me say in my conclusion, when I left the Steelyard Commons, my guts was turning because they weren't focused on the system. They were focused on what they wanted. And then it turned again last week when I saw the county prosecutor right up there with DeWine. He has to keep a distance from DeWine. So I don't trust him when it comes down to this case. And my residents, my bosses, your bosses also, said, Councilman, we do not trust the prosecutor when it comes down to this case. He have to keep a distance. And here's my fear. Here's my fear. If he bring it for an indictment, it might come out as a no bill. That's my fear. Thank you. Have a good day.
Councilman Zachary Reed, Ward 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, in the Bible it says that patience is a virtue. Now I know there are many people out there who would like to see this process and the situation on November the 29th resolved already, but it won't be. I rise tonight, Mr. President, in support of Resolution 211-13, simply because my friend, and I call Jeff Fulmer my friend, but because before Jeff Fulmer was the president, I knew Jeff Fulmer, I know his family over the last 13 years. But he made a statement last Wednesday
on the Bob France show that said, he said to McGrath,
Thank you.
Bob France, he wants Cleveland Police Chief Michael McGrath to resign. He said McGrath failed to support the officers involved immediately in the incident. Immediately. Not after the facts have been produced, not after all the stones have been unturned, but immediately. Our mayor, well, let me say this first of all. We've heard a lot talk about the Mike DeWine conversation. In the report, Mike DeWine makes it clear that this is a very unusual circumstance. And I think that is the reason that the mayor, the police chief, and the safety director put forth a task force, a separate task force. A task force not in the mayor's office, not in the chief's office, but a separate task force of professionals. Individuals that will look at and evaluate all the facts and then let the chips fall where they may. This resolution does not do as I've said at that table, and I'll say again here tonight. I support Michael McGrath. Michael McGrath is a 40-year veteran of this city, a police officer. Started as a patrol officer, went to a sergeant, went to SWAT, became a commander, and now he's done an outstanding job as our police chief. So I support him. But I also support this system that he has set up that says that we want an unbiased system. And that's what this resolution speaks to. Doesn't name anyone, doesn't refer to anyone's name, doesn't say whether this person's right or wrong. It says that that 8 members of this city council, we agree with the mayor, we agree with the safety director, and we agree with the chief that the system that was put in place needs to handle this situation, this unusual circumstance. So, Mr. President, I only ask one thing of you, Mr. President, as president of the City Council, to take this resolution that you now have placed as a resolution that says that we will refer it. And my hope and wish that it would be referred to the Safety Committee immediately so that we could begin to evaluate whether the system that the mayor has set up, whether the system that the safety director has set up, whether the system that our police chief has set up is a system that will say to this public that wants to ensure that whatever comes out after the investigation is clear, that it was done in a fair, unbiased, untainted way. This resolution speaks to that. And my hope under your leadership as my council president that you refer to our safety chairperson so that we can look at it immediately so that this public can continue to understand that we want a system, we have a system that is unbiased, that is untarnished, and that is fair. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Reed. As any piece of legislation, it will be referred for administrative review, and then once council get it, it will be referred to the Safety Committee, and the chairman of the Safety Committee will make the calendar. I can't stress enough the seriousness of the topic that we're talking about and the process that we're experiencing right now. I fully support the process. At the end of the day, there will be results from the process. And as you said, Councilman, the chips will fall where they may. Justice will be served. Rights will be wronged. Whatever way you want to put it, I have the full faith and confidence in all parties that are dealing with this serious situation. I have Councilman T.J. Dow from Ward 7.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think it is important, and as a past county prosecutor for 5 years, I think it's important, and I always emphasize the process. And I've held my comments because you gotta have a process, just like the police officers that evening had a process. Now we have to have a process, and we have to follow that process. But I do believe what Councilman Conwell was right on the head as far as the culture. There is a culture in law enforcement that we support any type of behavior at times. This is not across the board, but it cannot go We can't have that here. And I know what I've seen, at least when I've been at the table, is every time that we've had an incident, Director Flass has come up and he said, we're going to investigate it, and if the officers are found to be wrong, they will suffer the consequences. And that has been consistent. But we have to let the process work itself out. And we cannot taint the process by making statements, prejudgments before the investigation is done. And so I'm going to support letting the process work itself out, and then afterwards I'll make my comments when we come down.
Thank you very much, Councilman. Councilman Conwell, you have a purpose of speaking twice for miscellaneous? Very briefly?
Very, very briefly. As you know me, just say this. I've already started studying it, Mr. President, and analyzing it. As we would say, I've already done a SWOT analysis on this piece here, looking at the strengths, weaknesses, opportunity, threats, and the trends of what's going on in other cities as well. And we move forward to conduct a hearing on it. But I want to look at the cause of it first, and then you look at the problems, then you look at the solutions and some alternatives so that we can come up with some policies. I just don't want to have a hearing without having outcome measures. And so that means a great deal to me. And so it might not happen in March or April, but it will happen. But we want to have some outcome measures, and that's very, very important. So I will continue to analyze it, and we'll move it forward from there. So thank you for the point of privilege. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. President. I only rise to state that we cannot try anything in the media, that basically I do support fact-finding and to find out what really happened so everyone will have the same information with regard to tainting if there's anything that would require juries, etc. Trying things in the media only taints a jury pool so that no one can really come to a great conclusion because they may have formed their conclusion before all the facts are really out. So therefore, I do support waiting to see what has really happened when we get a final report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman.